Now, my poor, ugly, beautiful daughter is neither human nor wolf.
Soon, humanity will begin to realize that they're neither Homo sapiens or just crude animals. Like Moro says right there in Princess Mononoke about her daughter. Moro is a goddess wolf. You could say that, a spirit wolf, a guardian of the forest, and she raises a human daughter, a feral woman, if you will, who becomes Princess Mononoke, a guardian of the forest. And in that allegory, she really becomes, she transcends her humanity, but she goes through a time where she identifies as a wolf. And so she's sort of in dissonance, like being in the world and not of it, but like not knowing what team to choose. So she really gets along with her wolf brothers and sisters and family. And what happens is throughout the story, near the end, there's a recalibration period and eventually a 0 point period where Moro says that. She says, now my daughter is, my poor, beautiful, ugly daughter is neither human nor wolf. So it's like, reality, surely without, and sometimes within, until you reach a certain point of growth, is poor, beautiful, and ugly. And I like to say it's both chaotic and beautiful. And learn how to enjoy, not even enjoy really, but just understand and appreciate the chaos with grace, and all that's outside of you, and learn how to cope with it. So I highly recommend Princess Mononoke. I'll probably be using more samples going forward. So this is Monad of Creation 6. We'll be going over Trinity, union, and healing. And the funny thing is, this is going into the realm of the monadic consciousness within, and about this channel name, this podcast name, Monad of Creation. Back in 2018, I made an Instagram account named Monad of Creation. And I really liked the name, and I really liked Princess Mononoke at the time. So I used the Nightwalker, the forest spirit. Pretty much, the underlying energy within all of the earth. I used that as my imagery, and made a lot of allegorical Princess Mononoke images. And then Monad of Creation was originally from the band Mournful Congregation. I really like Mournful Congregation. It's probably my favorite record at the time, and it still is now. And I was just so resonant with both of those things. And it's funny, it plays out in such a weird way, because now that I'm learning more about the cosmic aspect of things, the universal God consciousness aspect of reality, it really makes sense when you think of it in terms of the Nightwalker, the forest spirit. And then with Mournful Congregation, their record, Monad of Creation. Once you become a monad of your own self, monadic consciousness within, the congregation you left behind, the congregation of man, the congregation of groups, the congregation of body identity, the congregation of really anything, of any man-made construct, they become mournful. So it's pretty interesting and beautiful how it's all played out. And I still listen to that record all the time. Monad of Creation, Mournful Congregation, hails Mournful Congregation. Y'all are the best funeral doom band. Super solid. 0 point, solemn, powerful, beautiful funeral doom metal. And Princess Mononoke is still my favorite film, anime of all time. Super solid stuff. So thank you, Mournful Congregation, and Hayao Miyazaki. But that is the little backstory behind the name and everything, and the imagery. It's pretty funny. It's awesome. It's beautiful, actually. It just is. Just is. So ultimately, everything I'm trying to aim for is about internal healing, and healing is evolution. Healing and evolution are pretty much the same thing. Once you get to a certain point, you realize, I'm healed, well, I want to keep growing. That's evolution. And within, so what's going on with this work is it's evolution within and without, in the microcosm and the macrocosm of reality, and hopefully it's going to transcend the current state of humanity into something much more beautiful. So, we're talking about healing, we're talking about all sorts of things, and I trust people to have discernment, to use discernment by this point. I trust them to be able to make their own decisions for themselves, listen to what I'm saying and not just treat it like a bandwagon. Even if you resonate a lot, you should still have healthy discernment. So if you happen to be an individual that's like really drugged up by big pharma, like I once was, you still have to use your head and figure out what's good for you, But ultimately, the spiritual path, whatever you want to call it, terminology is so annoying. I really don't like terminology. Human language is honestly not the best. But, this indwelling ascent towards the Creator is a path in healing. It's a biological healing path, and I've found this out through experiential knowledge and other people's testimonies on a similar path. Bioregenesis, Christ consciousness, krystic consciousness, Christar. So, terminology is insane. If you just listen to what I have to say, you'll get the gist of it, and you'll be able to integrate it into your mind, body, and spirit once you've figured it out through discernment and healthy thinking and logic, everything, intuition, everything I've laid forth, episodes 1 through 5. You should be able to realize that I'm not telling you how to live. None of this podcast is telling you how to live. Free will is the pillar of this world, of this universe, and free will is respected, and free will is encouraged. And I've gotten out of the trap of polarized consciousness, and I understand. Many people will just not listen, so it's fine. And I don't want them to just listen blindly either. This is like pretty interesting experiential stuff that people need to fully integrate before they actually jump off medication that they might need or something. Because everybody's brain chemistry, everybody's mind, body, spirit is totally different, and you really have to be solid in yourself. Know yourself, know thyself, higher case self, eternal self. So, this healing, triadic consciousness, sacred union, bioregenesis, it's ultimately what's within individuals dictates what society and the worlds become. It really does. So this is so crucial. This is really, really how things manifest right now within these specific laws of reality at the current state of the current human condition. And one last thing I'll say, they're loving people with good intentions on all sides of the spectrum. Whether they want total tyranny and human enslavement, and they don't realize that's what they're supporting, but they have a heart of gold, and then they're just going down that path. Or they, it's all people enslaving each other. Unhealthy democracy becomes that, okay? Unhealthy democracy, imbalanced democracy full of individuals don't know themselves ultimately becomes enslavement. So you add tyranny, you add totalitarianism, you add draconian laws. It's not a good thing, and they spin it as lovingness and empathy and goodness. Not a good combination. So I'm hoping, as things get really ugly, people with loving intentions, good hearts, and they're on the wrong side, they actually realize what's going on, and that's going to be like a harsh wake-up call if you're not in touch with the objective reality and how things are going, and then something comes out. I don't know how that's going to manifest, World War III, and things just hit the fan, or if there's some sort of disclosure, which I'm not counting on. Who knows? It's just, we gotta respect the free will decision of other people to support total trash, tyranny, and enslavement. But that's what they want to manifest, whether they know it or not. So, what they are manifesting, that's what they're creating. What are you creating through your actions and choices and what you do? So, to move on, the first section will be the Trinity. Triune consciousness, the triune mind, triadic, the Holy Trinity, whatever you want to call it. It really doesn't matter. Three principles interacting with each other that creates some sort of foundation or structure. And like I said, we're speaking internally. I'm going to try to keep this very, very, very internal, this episode. So, the internal realms in the mind, in the consciousness, and the unseen. The Trinity is very, very, very crucial. And a lot of people talk about, in the Orthodox tradition, it's the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. In Gnostic Christian texts, what was trying to get done there with the Cathars and all of those early Christians before the Council of Nicaea, even in other traditions, in Eastern traditions, all throughout human history, there's been some sort of triad. There has, but I'll focus on the Christ drama like big time, because that was that masculine, throwing us into that masculine dominant imbalance was really did a number on the human species. So the way I have really understood and incorporated and integrated the triadic understanding, the Trinity, is into three components. Three allegorical components based in gender and physicality, and then three practical components. So the three, archetypal, allegorical, whatever, components would be the mother, father, and the child. And it's a dynamic, right? So, the mother, father, and child. When you think of that, when you think of those words, a mom and dad make a child, right? So, the father is typically, very, very prominent, stern, has healthy balance over situations. Foundation, right? Foundation. It's the seed, okay? It's the seed. That's just the start of this Trinity. And it's everlasting. It got the mother, the receptive component, and ultimately the generative component, the creative component, the creator. She takes the seed and incubates it and creates something beautiful and new and fresh. And therefore, the child comes about after a certain amount of time. What is time? The child, a child. It's new life. It's something new. So the foundation, the start, if you will. The mother, the creator, the receiver, you got the seed, incubator, creation. So it could be thought of as, father precedes the mother, mother precedes the child, but without the mother and the father, you're not going to have the child. But how this is manifested in reality and creation, within, without, is really through your thoughts, emotions, and actions. So the father, mother, child, think about it however you want, but for all intents and purposes, this is an allegory to how individuals think, conceptualize, and operate in their consciousness in terms of governing, total governance, total control, total stability, but also flexibility and flow over their thoughts, emotions, and actions. So the thoughts would be attributed with the father, because without thoughts, without having control of your thoughts, or without having thoughts, if there are no thoughts in your head, no ideas, no concepts in the mind, there could be no emotions. If there are no thoughts or ideas in the mind, there's not going to be anything in the mind, body, and spirit. In the being, if there's no thoughts in the being, there will be no emotions to be had. And so the thoughts are the father, they're the seed. The thoughts seed the emotions, and the emotions do a plethora of things within the being. You go through ups and downs, all sorts of experiences within yourself, within your consciousness, be due to your emotions. And your emotions are 100% dictated by your thoughts. They really are. No matter if there's some external thing affecting you, if your thoughts can't really, if your thoughts aren't affected by that external thing, even if you're getting brutalized, if you're a pacifist and your thoughts don't care, your emotions are probably not going to care, right? But if you understand the self-defense principle, and you understand that you are worthy and you're valuable, and someone's trying to brutalize you, your thoughts are going to dictate the situation, and your thoughts are going to gear into your emotions, and your emotions are probably going to stir you into some sort of state where you're about to, take action and force, and defend yourself. So that's just one example. Plug anything into your thoughts, whatever the thoughts are, the seed, the father, the mother, the emotions are going to be based off that seed, right? Is it a poisoned apple seed? Probably. But some beings have, a crystal seed, a seed from the Most High, see from the unutterable one, a good thoughts. They have good thoughts, and some people have, some fathers, some beings have bad thoughts, and their mother component, their emotions, are going to be relatively based off that. If not entirely, typically entirely. So once it goes into the realm of emotions, the mother, there are a lot of factors that come into action. Some beings don't take action ever. They don't implement things they've learned to help themselves. Whether the action is good or bad, some beings don't take much action, but the actions that are taken, I assure you, are based off the thoughts and emotions. And often the emotions override the thoughts. So the actions would be associated with the child component because the actions are the events, choices, decisions, things you do that make change within yourself or the external reality. As within, so without. So the Trinity within consciousness it's within, without, but ultimately if the internal components and structure, grids, thoughts, emotions, actions, father, mother, child, whatever you want to call it, if the internal is not solid and operating well and functioning well, it's not going to be able to create very well. And it's not going to be able to make good decisions in the external reality. Like I said, over centuries and centuries, there have been so many forms of trinities within occult, religious, and esoteric traditions. But honestly, all of that is irrelevant. They're all signposts to creation and the fundamental dynamics of it. No matter what these traditions call them, no matter what is said, no matter the terminology or the concepts or interpretations of it, these principles and the laws of reality still operate the same way. So the Trinity here is very simple. It's thoughts, emotions, and actions. And if you're not in control of your thoughts, whatever you put in is going to be what comes out. If you notice the Trinity really, and it can be cyclical. It's flowing. It's more 0 point and flowing than a polarized thing. There's no pole really. There's 3 components, and if you obfuscate or erase one of these components or anything like that, it just becomes very, very, very odd and confusing. And I would love to comment on the masculine and feminine imbalance within certain traditions, but at this point it's really irrelevant. I think it's pretty obvious that when you remove balance in any structure, you remove symmetry, form, cohesion. Things don't go well. And that's what's happened within the human mind, body, and spirit. And a healthy Trinity, just a healthy being, is better off than something that's imbalanced or polarized or distorted. So the Trinity component is pretty key to what I'm explaining and the way I'm explaining it. So from the Trinity, we talked about the mother and father, mother, father, and child more of as an allegory to talk about your thoughts, emotions, and actions, and how that affects you and what you do. It's more about action. Trinity is more about action, okay? It really is, because it's the mother, father, and child. It wouldn't be talked about, the father would just be the thoughts chilling, and the mother would just be a generative principle, like not being utilized, and the child wouldn't even exist. So if it's not together, the child is the action. So of course the Trinity is mainly based on action. All right. So next you go into union, this concept of union, and specifically it's been referred to as hieros gamos alchemy and sacred union of the feminine and masculine components. And there's been a lot of obfuscation and confusion around this principle, a whole lot of confusion, even within people who really understand that it's an energetic thing at the end of the day. But nonetheless, that's changing within certain passionate individuals and groups of people who actually understand these dynamics a little better. It's becoming more mainstream, but it's still becoming obfuscated in certain ways in terms of the external union versus the internal union and that whole thing right there. So hieros gamos, sacred union, I just like to say union, just union, the union of the masculine and feminine components within and without yourself. So it's dealing with mental gender, okay? It's mental gender, the mental gender mainly within thinking and intuition and just all the components we've talked about. It's really the unseen mental component of it. It's not sex. It's not your physical sex. It's not your physical gender. We're not talking about, female, external, Homo sapien, female traits and characteristics when applied, when I say feminine here. And when I say male or masculine, when I say masculine, the masculine components, I'm not talking about a physical human that has male parts and is a male in sex. I'm not talking about that. When hieros gamos and sacred union are talked about, it's talking about the mental, spiritual, energetic components of gender within one's consciousness, within one's mind, within one's soul, within spirit, within all of creation. And it's very hard for people to conceptualize because we've been so stuck in the five sense illusion. Even people who want to learn or have spiritual capabilities or interests, the zeal for it, they still get wrapped up in this romanticized and the physicality of gender. And hieros gamos and sacred union, and I understand there's a lot of distortion and mind control, holographic inserts, and all sorts of things that just make it hard for people. Societal conditions, subjective life situations that individuals might have that might have shaped them and given them trauma, so it's harder for them to heal and integrate these components of mental, spiritual, gender. So we're talking about the internal when we talk about this. So the feminine component, the female component of mind, consciousness, soul, spirit of God, of creation. The feminine-female component is generative. It generates, it's a generative component. I want to nail that in hard because it's a very generative component. It's creative, very creative. It's nurturing. It's very caring and compassionate. This component of consciousness, the feminine component of spirit, it's generative, creative, nurturing, compassionate. And, there are probably a plethora of other characteristics that I could add to this list, but those are the main ones: the generative, creative, nurturing, compassionate component. And you got, when you have a being who is mainly operating out of a more feminine component of consciousness, they typically, honestly, are not as grounded. They're not as grounded either in their body or their physicality. They're not as grounded in reality, honestly. What's around them, like the actual things that are going on. I'm talking about someone who's very, very, very imbalanced towards the feminine component of consciousness. That's polarized right there, okay? It's polarized. It's to one pole. It happens to be a sort of a polarized thing, So if you're stuck on that side, these types of people in reality, honestly, I'm just gonna be real, are typically lost New Agers, lost religionists, even sometimes just lost anybody, any group. I think, like, I even, even people who are just, I don't know, atheist anarchists. I've seen atheist anarchists who are just stuck in the feminine component, the feminine component of consciousness, and just anarchists as in, renouncing, this fallen world's control system and just not wanting anything to do with it, and just getting stuck in a very feminine component, and not really being grounded with reality, being in touch. Head in the clouds, that type of behavior right there. Very spiritual often. A lot of these people are super tapped in, super tapped in. They might be meditating all the time. They might be praying all the time. They might just be really in touch with their intuitive sense in some cases. Very in touch with the unseen in some cases, but not as keen on the external manifestations or even themselves or even their own physicality. Some people are so in this imbalance that it's like they're not even in touch with their bodies really. Some people are not taking care of themselves, their physicality. And spirituality, the spiritual path, is integrative. It's a very, very integrated path. You have to take care of your physical self. Whatever God you believe in, for 1 second, just applies to atheists too. Why would a physical creation, atheists are typically not on the feminine component, don't get me wrong, they're typically not here at all, typically stuck in the analytical side. But even if you think everything is random for some reason, it's all physical stuff. So these people, your God, whatever your God is, your creator, your idea of creation, your idea, of an unutterable one, why would they put you in a body that is irrelevant? Why would they put you in a body that it doesn't matter? That doesn't make sense. You're supposed to be in touch with your physicality, with yourself, with your vessel. And sometimes people are just in this right brain imbalance. These aspects are associated with the right hemisphere of the brain. Associated with the right hemisphere of the brain. It's not so black and white. Cut the brain directly down the middle. Typically, these components, generative, creative, nurturing, compassionate, artistic, they're associated with the right hemisphere of the brain. And that's a feminine imbalanced being. You have to get rid of all ideas and notions of physical sex, gender. We're not talking about this. This is purely internal and spirit, which happens to be have everything to do with your brain chemistry. So, the masculine component is analytical and logical. A lot of intellect here. A lot of intellect. And rigidity. I'm not going to get into the imbalanced part yet, but the masculine component is analytical, a lot of intellect, intellectual, not intelligent, forceful, and is willing to take action typically. I mean, honestly, when you think of a macho guy who's really smart, and you boil it down to like the essence of mind and spirit, if you have that ability, that's really oddly the same thing. It's very fascinating and beautiful. And the same goes for feminine, like just like an image of a goddess, painting. And just creating, very nurturing and motherly or something. I mean, these components, like that's why in the past and in present in art and in allegory and archetype, the traditions would use the imagery of the goddess and the man. It's imagery, but it's also reality and truth. So, the masculine component, analytical, logical, intellectual, is ready to take force, typically, in action. And someone imbalanced towards this left brain modality and this left brain hemisphere understanding or mindset, getting stuck there is, when you look at the world, roughly the last 2,000 years, this type of dominance, analytical, intellectual, forceful, masculine dominance has been prevalent. Within the family unit and within society. I want people to keep that in mind. But on the internal workings of it, when somebody is stuck in this modality, it's very, very, very rigid and skeptical and controlling. Rigid, skeptical, controlling, very not willing to be wrong, not willing to be wrong or proven wrong, needs to be totally controlling. These individuals are quite frankly just really scary, and they're scary, but they're a joke. Like, honestly, it depends on your perception. To me, it's a joke, and it's really sad too to see people who are stuck in this modality. It's all of it, honestly. It's just, it depends, they need everything to be super orderly and in control and just their way or the highway, typically. And this leads, if situations are really ugly, it leads to violence, a lot of violence. And this is not toxic masculinity. The violence aspect has a lot to do with many other factors, okay? But this is when it's imbalanced, right? But when just the masculine component on its own is ready to take forceful action. Force is different from violence. Violence is a violation of one's sovereignty. You're violating someone's sovereignty. You're initiating unjust, immoral force, which is violence. Force is just force that's being applied, and it remains force if it's moral, if it remains in the self-defense principle, within natural law, God's law, the true law of one principles. So, the krystic principles. So masculine imbalance is an ugly thing. It's very masculine imbalance becomes controlling and violent typically. So when you have a healthy merge of feminine and masculine energies, feminine and masculine thoughts, feminine and masculine behaviors, a healthy merge of both of these things in one's mind, body, and spirit. It is something entirely beautiful and profound that goes under the radar very often. Typically people who have done this, they'll wonder, why are you so peaceful? How are you so okay with the situation? Or, often we're not okay with situations. People are not okay with situations because there's a lot of nastiness and just goofiness in the world. But typically, people's perception is just like, oh, that person is so, they're just good. They can manage in times of hardship. And this is sacred union. Someone who is at one with their feminine and masculine components of their consciousness, of their energy. They're generative and logical. Their analytical and generative components are in balance. Their intellect and creative capabilities are in balance. Their forceful and nurturing components are in balance. Their compassion and their willingness to take action, the warrior spirit, are in balance. Within. And once this goes into the realm through thoughts, emotions, and actions into the manifested reality, these beings can typically achieve things that really need to be done and that are in line with God's law, with morality, with righteousness, with truth. Sacred union and hieros gamos, union of the feminine and masculine component in conjunction with the Trinity, the triad, the mother, father, child dynamics of your thoughts, emotions, and actions creates what's typically known as monadic consciousness. The monad. You are the ruler, this dominion. You're the ruler, you're in total control of your energy, your thoughts, emotions, and actions. And this gets really specific and in-depth when you get into true Christic spirit science, which is just reality, okay? I put an emphasis on Christic for those who get what that even means. It's irrelevant at this point in teaching. But this goes into your morphogenic field, your energy, your aura. This really has to do with energy, with the unseen, and with your biology, your physicality. It has to do with all of it. And the reason there's so many distortions and distractions and things that just break the human spirit, break the human mind, body, and spirit, is so people can't attain this level of understanding within themselves and how they can interact with others. Because union and Trinity and union within unlocks the monadic consciousness, which is the 0 point. It's a 0 point portal where you can ebb and flow in experience. You can ebb and flow and still have your individuated sense of identity, but you're still at this 0 point of one with God, one with creation. This is going to sound so hard for some people to hear, who come from a more externalized understanding of how reality operates, but this is why this part happens to be experiential knowledge. It's just it's total flow and oneness with everything, and you remain solid in your individual self because you're still a being and you still have an identity, but it gives you the ability to interact with all situations almost flawlessly. Obviously there's going to be hardship and struggle, but at this state in human history, in this timeline, but it's really this is the component that all religions, traditions, esoteric schools, they all tried to teach this, and there were bits of gold trying to teach this consciousness, this connection with God. Christ taught this. If you really have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, when you read the Holy Bible, you will be able to look past the distortion and lies and see what that being was trying to say. Jeshua. Okay? And it's really beautiful. You don't have to join a group, you don't have to even use this terminology. It's just this understanding, these fundamental components of how your energy works, how your mind operates. And what's beautiful about it is it unlocks your inner child and your innocence again. You just have that sense of awe and wonder and humility with life. That awe, wonder, and humility with life, and often that creates another level of zeal for truth and discovery and growth in somebody. And they don't need any more groups, any more texts at that point. They can see beauty within all, and they can also renounce all and be fine. It's really a beautiful thing, and it's once individuals can understand this true unity based in individuated beings having a reverence to all, having reverence to God, reverence to each other. It's what evolution in science tries to comprehend, really, and what New Earth and religion and spirituality and folklore is. We're not getting the Earth is not, humanity's not evolving without understanding these principles of true evolution. Mind, body, and spirit, it affects all. So, once 0 point is reached, sacred union, hieros, gamos, whatever, the Trinity of thoughts, emotions, and actions. Once this is really locked in, creating things, whether creation is making change in the world, making change for yourself, or creating a physical vessel for a true, pure, natural, not an upside down world being, birthing a true natural being into this world. It applies to all that's within and all that's without. And in the New Age and spirituality, really, an emergence of twin flame hype has come back up, and the twin flame is really just like, for those who don't know, it's the definition of a true soulmate, the one, like your counterpart, your true counterpart. And a lot of people are looking for that, but you don't find your twin outside of you if you haven't had the union within yourself. It's hard. Otherwise, you're just attracting what you're lacking. You're looking for, whether you know it or not. People typically have broken subconsciouses, which are, by the way, not supposed to be broken. We're supposed to be birthed in full mind, body, and spirit intact, and just be solid. But that's a whole other story, and it goes really deep, guys. It goes really deep. This whole distortion within the human species, and it's biblical, but that's half truth and false light. And like every tradition is really half truth and false light. Every one, and that's, people aren't going to like to hear that. And science is almost at this point just totally not truthful. I'm sorry, let me revise that. Mainstream scientism, okay? Big pharma funded, hierarchical funded, not open, not really doing the true scientific method, that stuff. Science is beautiful. This is what this is. A spiritual path is a scientific path. It's science. You're figuring things out, you're deducing things, you're cross-correlating, you're analyzing your experience, you're doing science. I think it's pretty apparent. Just everything is so distorted and hidden and obfuscated. It's hard. It's really hard. So yeah, union in conjunction with the Trinity. Within will create a way better world without. I could beat that over the head. Honestly, I really only want to cover this once. It's going to be recurring in terminology, but it's vital. It's a vital understanding for all beings. Whether you think this is some weird spiritual mumbo jumbo, or you think it's some like satanic occult stuff, like your New Age stuff. It's not. It's the terminology within the occult traditions. The good aspects of it is just to describe the unseen dynamics of God and consciousness. It's hard to appeal to all groups. It really is. And as humanity evolves, all groups need to understand each other, and eventually there need to be no groups. That sounds so out there, but that's just before the fall, before the deluge, before Sumer. Things were not this broken. Things were not this broken. And we have choices to make. So ultimately, this is all about healing, okay? And it's about evolution, healing, and growth. The Trinity plus monadic consciousness over self. And monadic consciousness, for you monotheists, it's not polytheism, okay? There's still one unutterable creator that all beings pay reverence to. That's how I would translate it to you, okay? Monadic consciousness is not I am God, I am a God, I am powerful, I am the creator of everything. And it's also not this amorphous blob, this amorphous, New Age blob of energy, and it's all meaningless energy, all totally meaningless energy experiencing itself, like even within the understanding of energy and God, it's become very polarized into, there's just, like, it's not even polytheism at this point, it's just a blob of energy. Like, if you really talk to some people, it's just a blob of energy, or just a single, daddy creator in the sky that is completely deterministic and planned everything. So it's really hard to express these things to some people, but I'm attempting it nonetheless, and it helps me grow. Like, I want you guys to understand that a part of speaking, if you feel called to energetically, it really is helping me too. So, healing, it's about evolution, healing, and growth. It is. That's what true spirituality is. And it's not just energy. It has to do with your DNA. It has to do with your physicality. It has to do with what you put in your physical body. It has to do with what's in your environment that's coming in contact with your physical body. Every environmental component, every component that comes in contact with you, your vessel, is either honestly going to fall on the scale of being more better for you, or really good for you, or less beneficial towards you, or really bad for you. And sometimes there's malintent behind what's going on you. Look at what is being sprayed in the atmosphere. Not only, to affect the biology, but to block things out. What's being put in the food. Do you really think what's being put in the food given to the majority of humanity is good? Has a benevolent, beneficial, loving intention and purpose? Really look at what's in majority of food. It's trash. The processed stuff, it's not going to help you physically. And when your physicality is out of whack, I'm telling you, for some individuals, I truly think that sometimes this is on a soul identity level. I have heard of people who have completely trashed lifestyles and diets, and they just have gnosis experiences, and they just wake up to the multidimensional nature of reality, and it's beautiful, and they can just do it, and they've had like a trash lifestyle. But there are other people who can't really tap in, but once those people get out of their trash lifestyles, they fix themselves and their actions and thoughts, and they actually start eating more healthily, and they have a more genuine, natural diet. But so for some people, honestly, like, I shouldn't even bring that up, because no matter what you're putting in you is very, very important. Very important to pay attention to the quality of what you're putting in your physical vessel, and the quality of what you're putting in your fields, in your mind, in your spirit, and your soul. So, I don't know, I've talked about how it's DNA, it's genetics. It is, and we will, if I continue with the show, we will get people on here to talk about it in depth. I will talk about it in depth, but the basics of the emphasis on DNA is that, this really, really tricky, obfuscated scientific understanding of genetics, ancestry, genetics, ancestry, and DNA is really wrong. It is, and it has everything to do with the spiritual path and who you are and what you're capable of. But the field of epigenetics is the field of your environment, your lifestyle, your choices, your actions, everything we've talked about, affecting your genetic makeup and your DNA. So, when you look at the some of the occult or Gnostic Christian texts, when they say within, without, and stuff, things I say, and certain people I respect also still say to this day, which just make the most sense. What's outside of you, the field of epigenetics, 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 this legitimate scientific field, they're finding that what's outside of you, affects what's within you. And soon, when I say soon, I mean things like hundreds of years, if not 1,000 years, 900 years. I'm not sure. I don't know the time frame, but soon, this field, epigenetics, will also realize that what's within us, I mean, they already are realizing it. What we do in the external reality affects other things. But I think on a morphogenic, energetic scale, it's going to reach the point where it's literally a symbiotic relationship within and without. And I think, crazy things could be possible depending on what course the human species takes. Some of us are choosing a pure path. Some of us are choosing a totally polarized path. So the researcher who really opened my eyes, and he's not, I don't know him on a personal level, right? But he's more grounded than some of the other epigenetic researchers I know, and he describes his work very well as Bruce Lipton. Bruce Lipton is phenomenal, epigenetic scientist, and he's totally flipped the idea of how our consciousness, our soul, and our energy affects our physicality and the physicality and physical manifestation of others. He's flipped it on its head. And you can look into Bruce Lipton's work. The first thing I heard him say was about how he's working with petri dishes, and the organisms within them were acting differently and mutating based on what their environment was. And he took that very small microcosmic aspect and principle and observation and said, hold up, what if it applies to all other life? And that field blew up, and it's reality, okay? Epigenetics isn't like a new thing he invented. He's rediscovering it because he's a human who's been mind wiped at birth, and he's rediscovering the truth about this phenomenon called epigenetics. And it has to do with a lot of other spirit science. It has to do with Arias and Kalantic science and Christ consciousness, true Christ consciousness, natural law, okay? God's law. It has to do with all of it. So if the Creator created these components in reality, there's something to all of these components. If science, is actually legitimately able to verify that these things make an impact and change, and they do. You take my word for it. Recently, I've had a lot of changes in the fields of epigenetics, spirit science, Kalantic science, and God. That's what it is, okay? Like, that's the thing about all of this work. It's all that is. It's God. It's the Creator put these components and principles in the creation for them to symbiotically interact with each other and evolve and work well. I mean, there's a lot more history to it, and there's a lot more complexity to it all. But the simple concept of these components in the observable, verifiable reality working and being proven to work in life and have lasting change, that is science, and that is reality, and it cannot be ignored. You can choose to ignore it if you don't want to evolve holistically, lovingly, naturally. Pay attention to it and study it, and see if you dig it, see if it is for you, which it is for everybody. It's the path. This true reverence to the Creator, all of creation, and the more, technical fundamental principles of consciousness and actions in life. So within is the self, without the all, the external creation, the external reality, the external world, or whatever you want. Within self, the eternal self, God within, the conduit, 0 point that shoots you up. No, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. It does not shoot you up. You just delve to the deepest, most beautiful depths of knowing God. I think I've really illustrated already that the traditions and religions of the ancient past, there's gold, there's bits of all of this in them, especially in certain things in specifically the Holy Bible. There's very few things that are like pretty golden, but that are like totally profound and have transformed my life in terms of natural law and all of this and triadic stuff. But that you gotta really cross correlate the Gnostic, the Nag Hammadi, Pistis Sophia, and the Holy Bible. And if you don't end up becoming a light occultist Gnostic person, and you still don't have enough, you're gonna realize there's something missing still. You're gonna still realize the texts in the Nag Hammadi, even the Corpus Hermeticum and all the Hermetic stuff. Even if you're looking at all the occult and esoteric stuff, and the Holy Bible, and you're trying to go back and forth, the Holy Bible, Nag Hammadi, Pistis Sophia. Let's piece them all together, and you still don't get enough answers, man. That's where I was at a while ago. You go within, you just submit to God and yourself, and you just keep searching. The inner archives, once you have sacred union, the sacred masculine, sacred feminine component, and the triadic, it all unlocks the monadic consciousness, and the inner archives will just open up, and your intuition and you just gnosis, your knowingness, your knowing of truth and reality and what is good and pure will just unlock, and it's just the most beautiful thing ever. And that's the core of what these traditions and religions were trying to teach, but have been obfuscated intentionally to just decimate humanity in mind, body, and spirit, honestly. Going forward, this is really, you hear people talking about New Earth right now, okay? New Earth. And New Earth is really tricky because, the false light and all of that, the one love, unity consciousness, the amorphic blob of energy that we're all immersed in, and it's all just one love type stuff. It's hard, okay? It's hard for some of those individuals to be grounded. And right now, with disclosure about ETs, okay, like ETs, angels, all this stuff, it's really the same. I mean, here I'm just trying to focus on Trinity, union, and healing. But I like to recap and make it relevant to what's going on going forward. But this really gives people a really grounded sense of being able to see what is true and what is falsehood, what is distorted, and what is, triadic, what's at 0 point, what is Metatronic, what is Krystic, what is Luciferian, what is good, holy, Christed, okay? There's a lot going on, and this foundation, these understandings will help people a lot. And you have a purpose. I want to reassure anyone who might be feeling at odds. It's not my job to. I understand this. It's not my job to. But sometimes I feel like I have an obligation to say you have a purpose. But the paradoxical nature of it is that I'm going to say you have a purpose, but I can't tell you what it is. You have to discover this on your own. I can't fix your brain. I can't fix your mind, body, spirit, I can love you, I can help you, I can offer solutions. But action, like I've reiterated, action and determination, strength, wisdom, all these things are really, it's within. It's self. It's a self-internal indwelling ascent. It's an indwelling ascent. It's a delve into the deepest parts of yourself. And it's up to you to just discover this, to tap in, to submit. That is episode 6. That is episode 6. And all my, my Krystic homies who are listening, my brothers and sisters of all walks, everybody, any strangers, like, we're in it, and people really need to get it together and get it right. And if that doesn't happen, it's fine. Creation will learn one way or another. That happens to be the case. The grace of God is being able to let the creation destroy itself out of the free will principle the Creator instilled in it. Okay? God created free will, right? So you have the free will option to delve into the abyss of decay and death, or use the free will, take the choice and action towards growth and never-ending evolution. All right. Thank you so much. Blessings, thanks, and love to everyone. I have Patreon. I have 3 tiers. I have $5 a month. I have $10 if you have extra change, and I have a joke tier that no one should do, but it's there. It's fun. Check that out. Patreon.com/monad of creation. It's so bizarre, even like understanding these principles in full and embodying them, and then like, hey, I chose that handle 2 years ago based off a metal band, and without ranting. Yes, Patreon, Venmo, PayPal. The link is there in my link tree. Monad of creation, Ashitaka. I'm trying to make this a thing. All support, all energetic support is very appreciated. If not, that's fine. Share it. If you like this, share it. There's no reason not to. But the Patreon benefit, by the way, is invitation to the community, the Monad of Creation Stargate Discord community. And literally, if we could talk about whatever. No malevolence, no porn, no gore. No foolishness. No golems, like we talked about, okay? No golems. That's it, guys. Stay blessed. Stay up. I haven't said this in a long time because I went through a phase of it feeling like a joke. But you are infinite, okay? Choose wisely and pay attention.